All, and I certainly do appreciate, and to my colleague from Florida on the other side of the aisle, once again, it's always a pleasure. Mr. Speaker, only in Washington can politicians pat themselves on the back for cutting spending while actually increasing spending. That's a novel idea. Say, for example, we spend $100 on a program 1 year. The next year, we automatically assume that we're going to spend $103 on that same program due to inflation. If we only end up spending $102 versus the $103, according to official government accounting, we cut spending, but we increase spending by $2. Now, in the real world, at least back home, you can't simultaneously cut spending while increasing spending and saying you cut spending. You can't do both. It's one or the other. Families don't budget this way. Businesses don't budget this way. And I can tell you, it would have made my life a whole lot easier as sheriff if my budget automatically increased 3% because of inflation that may or may not exist within the program. If you change the baseline every year by inflation, no one has to justify what their increase is. But then again, we live in this fantasy world called Washington, D.C. This is where we live today. Fantasy is that we can spend more money than you take in, and it'll all work out in the end. We can be $17 trillion in debt today, but don't worry about it because it'll get better on its own. How does that work? It doesn't work that way. Mr. Speaker, our current budget process is broken. And by assuming automatic increases in spending, our system favors more and more spending without any accountability. Under this scenario, programs don't receive a real examination as to whether or not they deserve the increases. They just get it anyway. Just because they exist, they get more money. Not that they need it, not that they can show folks that I absolutely have to have it. We just get it. As Chairman Ryan pointed out last night in the Rules Committee, our current budget process has not been significantly reformed since the Budget Control Act of 1974, 40 years ago. We haven't done a thing. Well, given our fiscal situation, it's about time we do something to try to get this on the right track. And I appreciate the committee's work, and I particularly appreciate Mr. Woodall's bill tonight. Listen, these are important steps to refine and reform the budget process. You hear folks from the other side of the aisle that these are gimmicks. Well, I will tell you back home it's not a gimmick when you stand there and you have to justify why I needed more money in my budget as sheriff. I had to stand there to the appropriators and say, here's the reasons why I need more money. Oh, and by the way, Mr. Speaker, here's what we've done with the money to show that we've actually earned it for the taxpayers, to show that there was a reward at the end of the day, that the taxpayers got what they paid for. Up here, there is none of that. I sit in committee meetings day in and day out in regards to seeing money being spent by government nobody's held accountable. We give people 5-digit bonuses, Mr. Speaker, for doing a lousy job. But that's the way the government works. We reward mediocrity. This budget idea, if enacted, actually reins that in and makes people accountable for the dollars they're given to the American public, so the American public can see, hey, listen, we're just not talking about it, we're doing it. And so to Mr. Woodall and to Mr. Ryan, the chairman, I do appreciate all their hard work and what they've done and where they're trying to move this process forward. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from Florida.
Now I turn to the